All right, we're on air. It's Thursday, April 10th. This is a design and usability focused meeting for Backdraft CMS. Today's agenda includes a couple of issues specifically where we would appreciate having the eye of someone with design sensibility, and then a bunch of them that are specifically focused on improving the user experience. So starting with design issues, the first one is cleaning up the layout of the installer, since it's kind of a first impression improvement. If you're on a browser with a smaller screen or a computer with a smaller screen, and you're trying to install Backdraft, you can get into a situation where it looks pretty ugly. Issue number is 2873, and I think it looks pretty good, but the proposed solution, but it would be good to get someone else's eyes on that if you have any feelings on what that should look like. Could use a review, design review. The other one, the next one is the database log message page. So this is lovingly known as Watchdog in Drupal. There was a whole bunch of feedback about how this page is a little bit weird, and we made some recommendations on how to change it, and nobody could agree on whether their recommendations were an improvement or not. So the whole thing's sort of been tabled until we can actually get some consensus. There were two very small changes that had been made that have been committed for the database log page for Backdraft 110. One of them is we add a button dangerous class right before you delete all the messages so that you know that delete action is dangerous rather than it just being a normal button. And then the other one is there are two field sets at the top of the page. One of them is filters and one of them was the delete button. And the delete button was between the filters and the list, and we just swapped them. So now the delete button's at the top and the filters are next to the list they're filtering. There's a whole bunch of discussion about controlling the way those field sets work, about moving the delete button somewhere else, about having it on a different page or at the bottom or wherever, and that's the stuff we couldn't agree on. So if you have feelings on how to handle the field sets and the delete button, we definitely could use some feedback. I don't think we're going to get any of that in for 110, but it is something that we should think about improving. Maybe in 110.1, because it's user experience issue, we could probably get it at any time. User experience issues, our longest standing UX issue is issue number 37, which is improving the way the modules page works. Backdraft already has a search box on the modules page. It's like to type in the module you're searching for, you can enable it, and then when it's done enabling, the list stays filtered based on your search criteria. When we added the search criteria, we removed some features like the ability to group all of the core modules together so that you could either show or hide only core modules. This current proposal adds back the ability to filter that list by core, contrib, or custom modules. It also adds a select list that lets you choose a category or a tag for any of the modules that are on that page. And there's a lot of back and forth as to whether the current pull request is an improvement or not over what we have now. If it's too much, if we should do some of it and not the rest of it, if we should do more, like perhaps removing all of the natural groupings on the page. And it seems like everybody uses this page a little differently, and it's also very hard to get a consensus on what the majority use case is and who the intended audience is. The developers tend to interact with this page differently than people who are investigating Backdraft for the first time. So just, I think, some more feedback on that issue might be useful. I know it already has a lot of comments, but more feedback specifically about the currently recommended change, if that's going to be a improvement or not. The next one is issue 2923, which is adding settings to the search box form. So right now you can drop a search box onto any page in your site using the block in any layout, and it's not configurable at all. It gets a title, it gets a label, it gets a button, and it says search a lot of times by default. And so this issue will let you turn off the search button label, let you turn off the text in the button, and it will let you add placeholder text if you'd rather have that. These are three things that I do on almost every site that I add. I almost always remove the button label. I almost always add placeholder text. I almost always remove the field label for the field itself. as well as block label. So we've set that to default to be empty instead of on. And so the question remaining now is, in that pull request, if we allow people to remove the label, do we also want to leave the label on the page and mark it as element invisible or not? There's like an accessibility question there. And if we leave it on the page and mark it as element invisible, do we require customized text in it? So we don't leave an empty label, or do we like defaults using search? And how are the changes that we have now sufficient for the 80% use case, or do we want to include a customized label that's hidden from display but still visible to screen readers for that search element? Because placeholder text is not great for screen readers as an alternative to the label. So just trying to figure out how much we need to put in this form for the initial pull request, or if what we have is sufficient. So that could use some testing. I think in terms of the feature that it provides is great, but we could use a little bit more feedback on experience of customizing the search form. Next one, I just want to say I would love to get the missing tabs added back. When we added view mode support on the managed display subpages, the tabs have disappeared. This is issue 2681. It's something that someone who uses the managed display pages a lot irks me every time I notice the tabs are missing there. I don't think that has a pull request yet, but if we could get that in for 110 or 196 or 110.1, that would be fantastic. The update dependency message. So this is issue 2825. This is something that happens when you're running database updates. So for example, you're updating from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. If you hit a module that you haven't updated to the latest version in Drupal 7 before you get to Backdrop, the system throws a message saying, I can't update because this module hasn't met its requirement in order to do so. And the language it previously used to do that was confusing and not very useful. It didn't tell you which module it was or what update it wasn't able to do. It just was like, sorry, can't proceed. And so we have a pull request that replaces the unhelpful text with a lot of helpful text. And we're trying to figure out how to make it the minimal amount of most helpful text possible. And so we have a couple of different use cases we're trying to account for, like when you have many updates versus when you only have one, and how messages should be displayed to the user in those instances. So we could definitely use some feedback on the update dependency error messaging to make it more useful to people. The next one is issue number 2072. This is a new feature that went in for 110. It's the ability to upload a file from the link dialog button. So for example, you're editing a piece of content, you're pasting in some text from somewhere, and you realize you want to link the text to a PDF file. So you can highlight the text, you can click the link button, and you can click a little file tab and upload a file right in that interface. I would just love to get some more people to test that and make sure that the process of adding a file has a nice, clean user experience. All the language makes sense. There isn't anything in there that's confusing. That's already in. We could just use some user experience improvements before we release 110, if any are needed. So it's a fantastic new feature. I'd encourage everyone to give it a try. And then there's another one here on views exposed filters. If you have a view where you're exposing a filter for the username, for the user account, it just says name, and that can be really confusing, especially on a site where you are actually collecting somebody's real name as opposed to their username. Having a field that says name isn't helpful. So this is just a recommendation to change the label from name to username so it's a little more accurate. And that has a fix, which is great, but it's going to need an update hook. So anyone who had previously had a view with an exposed filter that said name would get updated to username unless they'd overridden the view, in which case we will leave it alone. It's a little bit of a tricky update hook. And those are the only issues we've called out as being issues that have design or usability focus that we want to get in anytime soon. But obviously, people have a lot of really great ideas about what needs to have user experience improvements. And so I would encourage everyone to look at the milestone for backdrop 110, as well as the milestone for backdrop 9.6, which will be the next bug fix release coming out. Is that right? 196. And there's also a label in our issue queue for audience-design. And those are usually issues that specifically need design review or actual designs posted to the issue before we can proceed. And then any issue that is user experience related, we just put square brackets in the title UX, because there could be any number of issues that are related to any of other things that also have user experience focus. So those are two ways you can search the issue queue for design or user experience specific issues. So that's all I have for those. Was there anything, Nate or Gregory, that I left off that we could have talked about or that you wanted to add for issues?
Just thinking about the dependencies in the installer. Are we trying to avoid too much like the long error messages? Is that what we're trying to do? Minimize the amount of text that we throw to the user?
I think that, so the problem right now is we give them one sentence that says like problems happened, and it's not very useful when you tell them what problems happened. And so the current pull request, I think itemizes every, it says, hey, problems happened. And then it's like, this problem happened, this problem happened, this problem happened. And then at the end it says no problems happened. So we just need to figure out how to minimize the amount of noise so that people can actually get the information they need out of it. So I think if we're going to itemize each problem that happened, we might not just say, hey, problems happened. And then at the very end, we should probably say like, no additional problems happened, rather than just saying no problems happened. We just told them about all the problems. But that's really hard because the last message has already been generated. We would need to alter it somehow, which is really tricky. Or catch it before it gets added to the page and I don't know, like somehow check for whether problems happened before we tell people no problems happened. And if problems happened, we can say no other problems happened. So it's just a little tricky, just so that we don't have like, you know, so much text people are like, oh my God, everything is completely broken, I give up. That's the impression I would like to avoid. If we're able to say, we had this one problem right here, this is how you fix it, that would be most useful.
Well, if it's 3 problems, how can you make it?
So if it's 3 problems, we should list each problem, but we don't need to say there's problems and then there's 3 problems and then there's no problems. So it would be 5 messages. If we could get it down to 3 messages or 4, would even be better than 5. And if each one were very concise, like this problem happened with this module, that would be fine. Or if we wanted the last one, rather than putting the how to fix it 4 times, like once with each problem, we could put 1 how to fix it. I don't know. We just need to think about it a little more.
And I'm just looking at the screenshots real quick from back 7th March, like a month ago. So the last warning that I see there to make backups doesn't feel, it's more like an advice rather than an error.
Yeah.
First feeling is, instead of, we can put an info thing or something, well, maybe it can be a warning, but yeah, I'll need to think about it.
Also, telling people to make a database backdate before they run the update, telling them that after they've run the update is probably not useful. So I'm not sure why that's coming out on this page anyway.
Yeah, maybe we could move it to like before even the requirements, like at the very first step.
Yeah. I think it just needs a little more thought. Yeah. There's a lot of good improvements there, but.
And I was looking at the other one with the design of the
installer.
The installer design, yeah. For the mobile version, I didn't go through all the comments. I'm just looking at the screenshots real quick again. I really like the mobile version, how it is there. Are the rows expanding on click or something, or we just?
I think we just hid all of the additional information.
And we'll hide it completely, like even for the file system thing where there's actionable items, we don't give the option for the user to just see that at all. We just hide it.
Yeah, it looks completely hidden.
Yeah. And then the other thought is just this. Maybe we should figure out a way to add it back, sort of like if these can become like accordions and can be expanded, it would still be out of out of people's way, but still reachable. I mean, the
I
info
think we
behind
just discussed something similar for the module installer, where it has the same problem on mobile, where you don't want to make people scroll for an hour to get to what they need, so you want to collapse it. So if we could come up with some pattern for hiding additional information in a table on mobile devices that gives someone like a plus or more link or whatever it is we use on the modules page now, where they can open that up and then it'll expand and show them more information and hide. That's something we could reuse across all of these interfaces that are tables on large screens and not trying to collapse into minimum amounts of space on smaller screens.
And the other thought is for consistency. It's okay. It's a good compromise that we put the step X out of X up there. But if we could stick there like the steps in the row, to actually know like the name of the step where people are. I'll come up with a design. I'm thinking all the steps will not fit there, but we could do the same thing that we do for pages, like have the current step, the next, and the previous, so that people can go back and forth. Because I don't see.
I don't think there's no way to go back and forth.
Oh no, you can't. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I see that.
So it's not actually navigation; it's just information.
Okay. Yeah. All right. It makes sense then.
But yeah, I think improving the installer, we've already done a lot for first impressions for Backdrop in 110. I think this would be another one that would take us a long way there. If people would be like, oh, you can.
I really love the fact that we're fixing even the tiniest things. Like we make tiny improvements, like overall and over time, it makes more polished, and it looks. It gives the impression that there's been thought put into it. That's really good.
Okay. Are there anything else we should talk about? There's more things on the list. Backtopcms.org, our main website. We have designs for modules, themes, layouts pages. Those are probably going to get implemented after the release of 1.15, but hopefully not too much after, because we have hopefully improvements going in for the modules page to 1.10. So it will be nice to get those working in conjunction with one another. And on the forum site, I have my local, I have a search box. Took me a little bit to figure out where to add it. Let me see if I can share this. Share screen. This one. There. So I put it in the bar at the top of the page with the where the breadcrumbs are on the right-hand side. And I don't know entirely about the design of the search button. Maybe make it a little smaller somehow. But just in terms of placement, do you think that's a good place for the search box?
Yeah, the only concern is like if we have, like if the breadcrumbs are big, it's gonna, or if the screen is narrower, yes.
I can make it smaller, like if we replace the word search with a search icon, I can make it take up, like right now it's taking up 4 columns, it could take up 3 columns, maybe even 2.
And then Laren has posted three links for some forum, which is number 50, 59, and 60. I don't know what these are.
What are they?
So he says more forum-related design items, and it's issue 50, 59, and 60. What are these? Let me grab them.
So one of them is, I just fixed that. So the first one, sorry, this is issue number 60. He was complaining about the pre-code block rolling over into other text. But if you look at my screen share, that's still up. You can see I added a horizontal scroll bar to the pre-code here. So when we have code that's really long, it won't move over. That's actually how I started this. Was like, oh, that looks terrible. I should fix that. And I was like, while I was in here, I'm gonna add this search box. Hopefully I'll get both of these pushed up today, and then we won't have that problem anymore. But yes, thanks, Laren. That's a great, getting more eyes on things. Okay, let's look at 59. The code block widgets in WYSIWYG are getting cut off. Yeah, I noticed that as well. So this is when you're creating a new post or comment. Let's see if I can demonstrate here. And you go to add styles. You can't read the names of the styles because the styles dropdown isn't wide enough. And this problem happens on backdropcms.org as well. So I don't know how CKEditor works, if it's easy to make this drop down wider. But we can try and do it in the theme and see if we have any control over that. It's a good idea. We'll see about that. And then let's see. The last issue mentioned number 50.
Yeah, accepted answer.
So this is for the the overview of the forum topic. Let's see if I can go back here. I don't have too many windows open. Okay, so like on a list of the forums themselves, each one of these rows could be colored based on its status. So if it has an accepted answer, we can make it green. Or if it needed help, we could make it red or something. So I think that's a good idea. Having them all gray is a little boring. If we could have those colors have meaning, that would be great. I think we also could add a column here because the color by itself isn't going to be super useful for people who are using screen readers. They won't be able to tell which one has an accepted answer. So I think we could add a column that says like has accepted answer or something in it.
I was wondering if we could do something like the same thing that GitHub does with tickets and their tags being there.
What's like that?
So see how in GitHub we have tags for needs, pull requests, and then these are like fields and they have colors. So you can have answered or not. Let me see if I can share my screen. It's most obvious, not in the backdrop. Issues. Let me hide sensitive information. And so see how GitHub has this is a feature request or a bug report or task. That's what I was talking about. So maybe we could add little, badges next to the tickets that say, resolved or needs feedback or I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that approach. I think it's less visually heavy than coloring the entire row. And like you say, it's or like Jen has the concern, it's also accessible because it has the text right there next to it. I know Apple's forums look kind of like that as well. That they've got just like written in green, like has accepted answer next to the title, rather than making like a new column or coloring the entire row, both of which kind of take up more space and also add a lot of visual weight that might not really be necessary.
Where's the example of this? Is that in the
issues? The backdrop issues, yeah, the list of the issues in the backdrop issues repo.
Oh, So, so Gregory shared his screen, but you might not have been looking at it while he did that, Jen.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyway, I mean, just go to the issue queue, and
Yeah.
how we have the little label next to things. And for starters, we would only have one label.
Is
and
this
that-
the exclamation point with the green circle around it? Is that what you're talking about?
No, so you're looking at the forum, which does not have what you call it, something we're using in the forum repo, any tags, any labels, let's say.
Oh, labels. Okay. So just like the color box with the word in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
After.
It's right next to the title.
Yep.
And if
Exactly.
these are tags, I'm not sure if we're using tags or not currently in the forum because I haven't been using it. But if
No,
these are tags,
the things we want to display are all flags, so that'll be easy to do that way too. Yeah.
so we can mark things as design-oriented or front-end, back-end, things like that, and people might be able to filter the topics that they are interested in easily.
Okay. Anything else we should talk about? That's it for forum items.
Nope. I think let's call it a design and UX meeting, and then we'll meet back up in 20 minutes for the last dev meeting before 1.10. So let's call it, and then we can get prepped for that.
Okay.
All right.
See you in a while.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.